Hello, folks. Dr. Paul here with a video summary for Unit 6. In this unit, we looked at solution focused and narrative ideas. I want to talk a little bit about these two approaches to therapy. You undoubtedly have been exposed to these ideas in previous courses, and that has been evidenced by your postings. Solution focused therapy and narrative therapy are two representations of approaches to therapy in the last 20, 30 years, so relatively recent times, that have been influenced by postmodern ideas and, in many respects, have stood the therapy world on their head. It's not a stretch to see that the therapy context traditionally has been looked at as a problem based context. And a therapist following the medical model is an expert. And depending on your model, you are able to diagnose and assess problems and point people in a direction toward fixing those problems. Solution focused and narrative therapies take a very different stance when it comes to the role of the therapist and the view of clients and the role of health and pathology in the therapeutic context. So the first thing I want to talk about with respect to solution focused therapy is this idea that you can apply this model as a series of techniques. And many people do see it as a series of techniques: scaling questions, miracle question, exception questions. Can be very helpful questions, obviously, to use in therapy. When they're not connected with a shift in epistemology, though, they tend to be just that, techniques. And so much of the richness and the depth of solution focused therapy is lost when we just look at it as a superficial approach to doing therapy, where we focus on helping clients find solutions. There's so much misunderstanding about solution focused therapy. Fortunate because Steve DeShazer, the primary founder, was so immersed in theory and ways of looking at the therapy context. When it trickles down to the mainstream, though, unfortunately, it gets reduced to a bundle of techniques. For me, the biggest impact and shift of solution focused therapy is really the assumptions underlying the approach. And so I find it much more beneficial to talk about those assumptions rather than specific techniques. Some of the assumptions of a solution focused therapist, and really what should be impacting you as a therapist if you embrace this model, is the idea of non pathology. Now, certainly that extends beyond DSM pathology, and that certainly doesn't mean that we don't understand the role of diagnosis and DSM in our current culture and we don't believe in it. That's really not the point. The DSM represents a language, and much of our culture speaks that language, and much of our culture speaks the language of diagnosis and assessment. In your work with clients, though, you are free to embrace different languages. And so we don't go about teaching solution focused therapy to our clients or talk to them about non pathology or why the DSM is only a language and not a truth. Rather, we want to embody these ideas rather than see ourselves as teaching them. And the shift in epistemology to a non pathological perspective provides so many wonderful opportunities to be with clients in ways where they can empower themselves or they can be empowered by the process and they can really own the process of therapy without us having to feel like it was our expertise or our brilliance that caused the change. It's always a good idea to work on removing your ego from the therapy process. Of course, it feels good when clients are helped, but the sooner you can come to a place where defocusing off your ego and how much you've made a difference and more on creating a context that empowers clients and maybe even disempowers you as a therapist, I think is a good thing. When we talk about non-pathology, even beyond blatant types of DSM diagnosis, there are so many subtle ways that we pathologize clients. If you think about it, every time you pose a change to a client or a system, you are saying that something isn't right here and therefore it needs to change. And whatever way you're pathologizing what needs to change is your specific brand of pathology in that particular case. Now, many people say, well, clients come wanting answers, clients come wanting direction. Absolutely, that's true. But just like people who are starving or dying of thirst in the desert just want a crumb, when you give somebody the answers, you're just giving them a crumb. When you work on being with people and connecting with them, you provide something much more healthy and nutritious than just a crumb or a few drops of water. So, embracing the shift toward a solution focused perspective means you beginning with yourself, not seeing change and pathology and understanding your role as an agent of change, but rather seeing your role as an expert in uncovering others' expertise. Want to begin to think about the whole role of a therapist, the whole therapy context in a very different way. Clients aren't these pathological beings that we come to fix. They have the resources, they have within them the strength, they have within them the expertise, the intelligence. And so, if you embrace a solution focused perspective, you're really saying clients are fine the way they are, whether they're abusing heroin, abusing one another, um, afraid to get in an elevator, whatever therapeutic problem you can imagine, there are ways of making sense of a problem context so that you're not agreeing with the behavior. It's an important distinction. It's not about agreement, it's about understanding. And when you understand a problem in context, you're able to look at it from a variety of perspectives where you're not pathologizing because it makes sense. And there's no behavior that you can't understand in context. No matter how horrific or despicable you might think it to be, there's still an understanding that you can have of it where you're not moved to necessarily make change the number one thing you're interested in. So I'm jumping around here, but it should be evident that this is an approach that has been misused or misunderstood by a lot of people, and it is deceptively simple. It's a wonderful approach to embrace when you are trying on different models for size, because it is very user friendly. But I would just encourage you to read some of the original writings of Steve DeShazer and Insoo Kim Berg and Bill O'Hanlon. Um, some of these folks because there's a lot more depth to this approach. Um, Sometimes there's this misunderstanding, as I alluded to, that this only works with minor problems. You can use solution focused ideas, as far as I'm concerned, with any therapeutic presentation. Again, it has more to do with orienting you as a therapist toward your clients and um, imposing a relationship with them that is much more collaborative, much more privileging of the client's language, preferred metaphors, experience. You really need to, for yourself, turn the therapy context upside down to see your clients as people who can educate you. And in the process of educating you, their expertise is revealed. Um, okay, there's this myth that you don't talk about problems in solution focused therapy. I think I've watched some videos of Insoo Kim Berg, and sometimes it's a bit painful to see her not allow people to express themselves and to um, vent about their problems. And not every video. I've seen some brilliant videos of her. And I've also seen some where I felt like the people needed to talk about their problem a little bit. Um, and I think it's a stylistic difference. For me, it's fine to be coming from a solution focused perspective and allow your clients to vent about their problems. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that I become problem focused. I can still maintain my solution focused lens and privilege the client therapist relationship. And part of that privileging is letting clients soak in their problems for a while. They want to do that. So quick to be applying solutions and be thinking about change. This is much easier said than done because our culture is steeped in the idea that we have to perform as therapists, we have to have the answers, we have to figure things out. We're the experts. And when you embrace a solution focused perspective, it's anything but. You're really looking at your clients for expertise. What we are experts in is being curious. We're experts in asking questions, about using metaphors creatively, and really our expertise lies in uncovering others' expertise. Solution focused therapy was largely built around studying the great hypnotherapist Milton Erickson. And I would encourage you all to look up some books that have been written about Erickson's work. A terrific one is called Uncommon Therapy by Jay Haley. And you can get a flavor for where solution focused therapy actually came from. It's a wonderful little paperback about Milton Erickson's work and his very creative strategies toward building on whatever people brought to therapy. And narrative therapy, again, another therapy that was born out of postmodern ideas. Um, People like Michael White looking for different metaphors to understand the therapy process, wanting to move away from cybernetics and systemic metaphor that family therapy was founded under, and look at more literary metaphors. So rather than seeing people as interconnected parts, each affecting the other from a more systemic perspective, the metaphor of story came into being. And a wonderful approach to therapy. I had the opportunity to see Michael White a couple of years ago, before he passed away, in Miami for a 2 day conference, and it was mesmerizing. It was 2 straight days of just being enthralled with a guy that has thought so much about the therapy process and has so much faith in people, embracing all the same ideas that I've just been talking about with solution focus, that people have competence, people have um, stories and narratives in their life history that it can be our job to assist clients in uncovering those stories of strength and resource and empowerment. I think the misunderstandings around narrative therapy have to do with the idea that you're going to help people replace bad stories for good stories. It's just more applying pathology and then attempting to fix it. That's not really what narrative therapy is about. Narratives are constructions, are dialogues that people have about themselves and another. And when we embrace that idea, we realize that as we meet with clients, we are not discovering those narratives as much as we are helping to shape them. And this is very much a postmodern, or what we would call a second cybernetic idea, that the therapist is very active in shaping the constructions or perspectives or narratives that emerge in therapy. So it's not like we necessarily dig for them and we discover or find them and then show them to our clients, but rather through our questioning and what we choose to focus on, um, those stories get constructed and thickened, um, with the therapist being an active participant in that. Again, I would encourage you to go beyond your general textbooks on narrative therapy and look at some of Michael David Epstein's work, so you can really get appreciation for these perspectives. Um, I've addressed some of the misunderstandings that were creeping up in some postings, although by and large, I felt a lot of you had a good understanding of the models, at least at the level of being able to talk in the language of those models when it comes to the types of interventions, the type of jargon that each model would embrace. So again, I would encourage you to look a little bit further, um, and enjoyed this video. See you next time.